Hey, so if you're a Coho fan, you might or might not like my video. Um, but I had to resort to a video for today's review because text is just not enough. Well, it's going to be more of a rant than a review, and on November 9. Well, if you can see the posted tags over here, I have precisely 42 tags on this book, and I'm not going to explain each and every one and make it so lengthy. I'm just gonna cut to the chase because honestly this book pissed me off. No, I would be lying if I said this book pissed me off from the very beginning, because I actually liked the first chapter. So how did I get around to reading this? Well, I was at Bengal Boy, and the book I was reading the day before, I couldn't find it anymore because probably someone else was reading it or they bought it, I don't know. Well, that's a common thing to happen because haha, I'm broke. So I had to look for another book, and while surfing through the shelves, the only book that kinda, caught my sight was November 9, because this is the local copy, but the original book cover is beautiful. And also, I saw a lot of hype about this book, and I have read Colleen Hoover books before, so I thought, let's give it a try. I mean, what's the harm, right? And that was the first time I judged a book by its cover. Really regret it. So let's jump into the basics first. So we have two main characters. One is Fallon O'Neill, who was an actress, and then she had this accident where half of her body got burnt and it left scars on her face and body, and she thought, and her father thought, that she'll never be able to act again because she thinks she's not attractive enough for the industry. And so she decides to move to New York on the second anniversary of that accident, which apparently her father has forgotten, and they're discussing all of this over a lunch table. Then we have our second protagonist, Benton James Kessler, who happens to be sitting right beside their table and overhearing the entire thing, and then pretends to be Fallon's boyfriend, which he plays along with, and saves her from the frustration of dealing with her father, who thinks she's not dateable anymore. Like I said, I did not hate the book from the first chapter. I actually did like the first chapter a lot, and this is what happens in the first chapter. Story. The first chapter is everything you need to know about the book, and the book could have very well ended there without all the sexual frustration, the teenage angst, the need for validation, sympathy, and so many other things. This book has a 70% erotica, and 30% of it is a sob story. The sob story being, well, I'll just break out the plot twist to you so that you can get as pissed as I am right now. Ben's mother died on November 9, exactly the day when Fallon's father's house caught fire, and she blames her father for that till date because she thinks he forgot about her being inside it. So guess who lit the fire? Yes, you guessed it right. Benton James Kessler. So Benton and Fallon were both 16, and Ben's mother just committed suicide early in the morning, and he did not even read her suicide note, where she writes that she has cancer and she doesn't want cancer to kill her or her family to suffer for her, so she's committing suicide and ending things and leaving them endless inheritance and blah blah blah. But he thinks he's smarter than that, and he checks her phone instead and sees text from Donovan O'Neill, who happens to be Fallon's father. And he decides that the reason for his mother's death is definitely that guy, and he needs to take revenge. So this 16-year-old with all of his teenage angst goes to Donovan's place and lights his favorite car on fire. And Donovan is so broken by the death of Ben's mother that he forgets that Fallon's on the top floor and her room catches fire. She gets burnt, and that's it. That's the end of her career. That's almost the end of her life. And Ben blames himself for it as long as he can, until he meets Fallon 2 years later in that restaurant, and then he falls in love with her, and he wants to give her everything that he has taken away from her. He wants her to be happy, and well, that's it. That's the story. But no, they had to make it more complicated. They had to put unnecessary drama into it. Like, they make a pact. Since Ben wants to be a writer, Fallon wants him to prove to her that he wants to be a writer, so he gives him a task. They make a pact for 5 years. Well, they won't have any attachments or communications, but they'll meet once a year on November 9 for 5 years until Ben finishes that book and Fallon turns 23, which is a ridiculous fact that her mother told her about girls' lives, that girls cannot take their decisions on their own or find themselves or fall in love until they are 23. And so Fallon makes herself wait for 5 years to fall in love, and makes in turn Ben wait for 5 years to fall in love. In between those 5 years, a lot goes down between them. Fallon and Ben spend time making out. On the 3rd year, Ben's brother Kyle dies, and Fallon and Ben have sex, and then Fallon leaves Ben because she thinks he should be giving time to his family. And the next year, Ben starts dating the widow of his brother because he wants to raise the child. And then he breaks up, seeing how hurt Fallon was by it. Then the next year, Fallon's friends set her up with Ben, and then she finds out about the manuscript. After making love to him all night, in the morning, she wakes up to this manuscript that tells her that Ben was the cause of the fire. And the year after that, Ben gives her the entire book explaining everything about his mother and her father, and how the house caught fire and how he didn't want to do it. And then they forgive each other and live happily ever after. So to live happily ever after, the story is built up to 6 years, 6 November 9s consecutively, where they meet, wait for each other, and mope and whatnot while their life goes on and on and on, without communicating with each other, without talking to each other, without even knowing anything about each other. Their strangers with benefits relationship carries on, which is pretty, I don't know, bland for me. I know. In defense, a lot of you are gonna say that this is super romantic, and I know where you're coming from, but to me, this isn't romantic. Waiting for 5 years and making someone else wait for 5 years, not moving on in life, even though you've told each other that you can date other people and that you're gonna date other people, it's not going to be a monogamous relationship. I mean, you don't even have a relationship, neither do you have a friendship. And then you keep this on for 6 years, and then you finally decide that you're correct for each other and start dating. with all of this drama going on and this stupid plot twist about Ben lighting the fire, I mean, all of this is very, very, very off-putting, and this was the summary of the story. Where Ben reveals that the first thing he ever noticed about Fallon was her ass, and he was wondering what kind of panties she was wearing. Like, if any stranger said that to me, I would probably slap him across his face. I mean, this is super creepy. You're not supposed to tell this to someone you just met. And Fallon has no reaction. She just laughs. And she feels great about it because apparently no one ever compliments her, which is both sad and self-deprecating. There's a lot of self-deprecation, guys. I can't take it. Then when they're in Fallon's house, he undresses Fallon and she does not protest. She says nothing. I mean, it's her choice, but it was still very off-putting for me. And then Fallon makes this comment about sex releasing endorphins, and she thinks if they have sex on the first night that she leaves for New York, and since she's a virgin, she hasn't had sex ever, she'll relieve enough endorphins to keep her awake. Then Fallon makes another comment, probably on the third year when they're having sex, and the thing that's going on in her mind is her mom is wrong about girls needing to find themselves because girls can never make themselves feel good with anything else in the world the way a guy can make her feel in bed. I don't know what to say to this. I mean, Colleen Hoover, being a girl herself, I don't know where she came up with this, or how she came up with this, or why she wrote this, but this thing was utter bullshit, and it pissed me off so much that I wanted to drop the book then and there, but I didn't. I just put a lot more post-its on it. And then there's a comment Ben makes about guys' choices in girls where he says, guys look for boobs in girls and a good sense of humor, and if they find a combination of both, they found the fucking holy grail. Which, again, doesn't work for me. Nope, not working. So, yeah, I guess that's all for this rant. This book was very disappointing. A lot of people have given up on YA and Colleen Hoover. I personally liked Maybe Someday and It Ends With Us, the two most controversial books she has. Maybe Someday was okay for me, and It Ends With Us was great for me because I felt like it was a very honest book, even though it wasn't flawless. But this book is full of flaws, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to read it again and like it, or if I'll ever recommend it to anybody else. So if you're a Coho fan or a November 9 fan, please do not be offended by this video. I do not mean to hurt anybody's feelings. It's just my opinion, and I rate this book 2 out of 5.